So awesome, Jen. We've kind of been bouncing around trying to get you your commercial mock check ride done for a while. So tell me about how you've kind of gotten to this point. I know we've even flown together. So for those of you who might recognize her, yes, we went and did some seaplane stuff. So go check that out. But tell me about what kind of got you to this point. Why are we at commercial? What's your kind of goals after this as well?
Yeah, so I just got into aviation on a complete whim, and I didn't realize how much I was going to love it. And I went from a point where I was kind of leaving my old life behind when I used to live in LA, and I thought I was pursuing one career. I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, and there was a little hole in my heart. And thankfully, aviation came around and filled that hole. After my first discovery flight, I was immediately hooked. I said, I have to make this my life. I want to do it as a hobby, but also as a career. So I immediately dove into private, instrument, commercial. I want to keep going after this. I want to jump right into CFI and double I and get that one done. And I just can't wait to start actually working as a pilot. I don't know where it's going to take me yet, but I'm open to whatever comes.
Awesome. I know everyone's kind of got like a goal. And I mean, we all know, me and you, we both make dumb videos on the internet for people to laugh at. But what would be like if you were going to say, okay, dream job, dream like aviation, dream airplane, dream operation, because we always say like dream job is like, oh, nobody dreams to work, but like
not dream of labor.
Yes. But like if you had to pick like, okay, if I'm going to do this for the next 30 to 45 years in this airplane, like what would that kind of look like for you?
So there's a few things that really appeal to me. I don't see myself being in the airlines, but I do really like the idea of doing some like either like 135 or Part 91 jets, that sort of thing, maybe something a little bit more private. I'm also really intrigued by adventurous kind of flying. I've learned throughout my training that when I'm in a scary situation, it doesn't really rattle me and I actually enjoy it and I lock in. So I'm really intrigued by stuff like aerial firefighting, and NOAA has those hurricane hunting planes. And I think it would be a dream. I will do whatever I have to do to make that happen. I like looked into it and I found out that I might have to go back to school because I need all these STEM credits and I was a communications major. So, well, it's worth it because I think what they do is amazing. It's thrilling and it's also doing a huge service to the planet.
Awesome. Yeah, NOAA, like those hurricane chasers is definitely awesome. And I mean, the firefighting is, from what I've seen of it, because it's game changing. Like it is an entirely different operation because you're flying just massive aircraft into some of the most hostile environments. Like a fire, and trying to get them out under the G limits that they're kind of rated for. We all have seen that horrid video of that was a DC-10 that lost its wings doing that aerial firefighting.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a it was a clay dumper, and I don't know if you've seen those, the aerial firefighting clay dumpers.
Yeah.
They, again, I don't like to speculate on what happened, but it looks like they just ended up too low in where they were trying to go and pulled, and they pulled too much, and the wings came off.
Wow.
So
that'll
a lot of risk associated with that. But after you finish this commercial, you said going on to CFI, double I, any goals for like MEI or anything like that?
I'm definitely gonna get my multi. I don't know about MEI. Just considering like maybe I'll decide after I get my multi, because I'm hearing a lot about like the physical force that is needed in these trainings, and I get the sense that maybe if I'm paired with a student who's a lot stronger than me, that could be dangerous. So we'll see. TBD.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that happens in any, whether it be multi or single engine. I mean, I had to bop a student in the leg one time because they locked up on the rudders in a stall, and started doing those fun little spins. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I know when I was getting ready to start multi-engine training, I was genuinely concerned because I'm like, my ACL, like I tore that. Am I strong enough for this?
It's a valid question.
But I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, the airplanes have definitely changed from some of the older ones that had really tiny rudders because they were just trying to go fast. But Let's get into the commercial mock check ride. Now, I gave you a little bit of a scenario, and I'm just going to read it out just so that we're all kind of on the same page going into this. So the scenario was it was an aerial photography mission, right? So as for our route, what we're going to be doing is going from your home airport of 06 Charlie to Kilo Sierra Bravo Mike, or I believe that's Sheboygan, right?
Yes.
And you're going to pick up a photographer, and you're going to go do a photo mission over the west shore of Lake Winnebago. And then you're going to do a stop at the Oshkosh Airfield to drop off that SD card with the photos with the Department of Natural Resources at that base there. The photographer, they weigh 160 pounds with 50 pounds of gear in a single bag that can't be split. It's going to be 2 hours around Lake Winnebago in an area of low speed to get the photos. Think about food, water as needed, right? When we're doing these missions, right, up until this point in your kind of training, it's all very simulated, right? So when we start doing actual missions, we're like, well, we're going to be stuck in the airplane for 6-7 hours. Like, I'm going to need to bring food. I'm going to need to bring water. There's weight associated with that, right? So this is your mission. This is how are you going to plan it? You're the pilot in command. And last thing, right, is we're going to talk about, is this legal under your current operation, you renting this airplane, which is a 172 November model. Estimated time of arrival on the photo site was 12:30. We planned that for today, so we're kind of posthumously doing this flight. And we are going to use some accurate weather. So we're going to look back at what the weather was looking like earlier in the day today. Now, before we get into all that, right, just like any check ride, this isn't your first one. There's 3 possible outcomes. There's satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and incomplete. Satisfactory really just means that you're consistently inside the standards. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't momentarily fall outside the standards. And if you do fall outside the standards, you apply a prompt and appropriate correction to get yourself back within the standards. Pretty basic stuff, right? And then there's incomplete. Incomplete really is just we ran out of time. Aircraft airworthiness that was like caught during pre-flight, right? If you know, the example I use a lot of times is the student that tried to take off in an airplane with like G3X touch panel across the board, and it was saying avionics update in progress when the student applied full power to take off.
Oh my gosh.
So obviously, we're not going to do that. All right. And last question any DPE is going to ask, is you've already gone through this a number of times, is have you read the ACS and you understand the standards that you're being held to?
Yes.
Awesome. So for your commercial check ride, what documents are you really going to pack and you're going to bring to this check ride?
So most importantly, I'm going to bring the check ride fee. No emotion about that.
No, God. What are these fees up to nowadays?
Depends. Where I live, it's like 800, 900, 1,000. You go out west, you could be looking at 1,500, 2,000 from what I've heard.
Yeah. God. So glad I'm done with check rides.
Right.
Okay. So check ride fee. Awesome.
Yes. I also need my pilot documents, which are going to include my pilot certificate, my valid medical, and my government issued photo ID.
Awesome. Now, what kind of medical do we actually need for this check ride?
To take the commercial check ride, you need a 3rd class medical.
Awesome. Now, with the recent changes, like back in October of last year, do I need a medical to go take a check ride?
You could be on basic med.
Okay. Anything else? Or is it just basic med?
Are you talking about Mosaic?
Yeah, I mean, what's Mosaic all about?
I know that Mosaic kind of expanded the definition of what light aircraft are. Like, I know that beforehand there was a light sport category where the max takeoff weight was like 1,250 pounds. And there's like you can fly, if you have a sport license, you could only fly those. If you had a private certificate, you could fly those, or like a 172. But now under the new rules, something like a 172 would actually be grouped in the same category as the light sport planes.
So when it comes to privileges, sure, I'd agree with you there, right? When it comes to what you can fly, sure, we can group regular general aviation airplanes with the appropriate stall speeds and whatnot in with light sport. But the issue that lies with explaining it that way is I can technically go take a 3-day course and do what's it called? Effectively the annual of a light sport for my own light sport.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that with a certified airplane, even with the new rules of Mosaic, right? So we see how lumping them in is like, okay, well, they're all LSAs now. Isn't really it. What I like to word it as, or what I recommend people changing it to so that it doesn't get mixed up, is that, hey, what does Mosaic change? Well, Mosaic really only changed what sport pilots can do. It just says sport pilots can now fly airplanes with clean stall speeds less than 59 knots, no more than 2 people. And all the endorsements and such still apply. And if you have a private pilot, commercial, what have you, those privileges that you have, if you choose to no longer go get your medical, you can drop down to sport pilot privileges. So for example, if you have a private pilot certificate, you've been going in and out of Bravo, congratulations. You don't have a medical anymore. You can still go in and out of Bravo under your sport privileges in your 172 because you've already been doing it, right? And I know, there's a couple people that they were thinking, oh, Mosaic is great. Now I can go work on my airplane because it has a stall speed less than 59 knots. Right? Which is not the case. So you can take a check ride under those sport pilot privileges. You can still act as PIC carrying a passenger.
Right.
Right? So it's just checking on those new rules, right? Do we understand all the limits and privileges and limitations of those new rules? Now, what about, we talked about the documents you need. What does the airplane need to bring to this check ride? Or really, what do you think the DP is going to want from you and this airplane when you show up when it comes to the aircraft's paperwork?
So on the aircraft, there's a few things that we have to always have on board. We have to have our airworthiness certificate, our registration. We have to have our, not a radio operator's permit because we're staying in the country, hopefully. Our operating limitations, which is going to be our POH, and our weight and balance sheet that is specific to that one aircraft. Also, any placards that are listed in the POH, any compass deviation card, and any supplements. So if you installed anything in the aircraft after manufacturing, any of the operating handbooks for those supplements need to be available as well in the aircraft.
Awesome. So is there anything that's been installed after the fact in this aircraft?
No.
No? This is just raw, straight from the Cessna factory? I mean, what year is this thing?
There actually is. There's one, they did install a Garmin. I forget which kind because I haven't actually even gotten to fly this plane yet, but I know that's all they have is like one of the brand new, like the early Garmins. Everything else is like straight late 70s.
Oh, wow. That's rough. But I mean, I guess at the prices, like for heaven's sakes, a Garmin 430 WAS is still like $5,000.
Right. Like private was expensive. Instrument was expensive. I am fine with the old school.
Yeah, that is fair. That is fair. So we recognize there is some equipment that's been installed in this airplane afterwards. What do I need? What kind of paperwork do I need to actually legally be allowed to install that equipment? I can't just like run to AutoZone and get like LED lighting from the Gee Whiz aisle in AutoZone and throw it in my airplane, right?
Well, I mean, you could try, but that probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Okay, so what allows me to do it legally? I guess it would be the better way to put it.
So if you want to put something else on your aircraft that wasn't there when it was manufactured, you're going to need what's called an STC.
Okay, so what's an STC?
An STC is a supplemental type certificate. So these are different things that when companies want to make something you can kind of add to your aircraft, they create it, they go through this testing process, it gets approved by the FAA, they do safety testing, all that. FAA gives them their stamp of approval, and then they're able to distribute that, and then you as the airplane owner can go out and get one of these items installed on your aircraft legally.
Okay, awesome. So for example, I'm trying to think of something specific to the 172. If I remember correctly, the 172 you can get rudder trim installed as an STC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, can I just say, okay, well, the STC exists, so I'm just going to go to any AMP and they're gonna follow the directions, and they're just going to install it and write in the thing STC blah 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 rudder trim, or do I have to like go to the actual manufacturer of that STC?
I'm pretty sure you have to go to the manufacturer because they created it, you know.
Right. They kind of have that legal ownership of it, right? And it's kind of frustrating because you'll look at some STCs and the part is like $400, but the STC is $2,400, and you're like, wait a minute, somebody's making a lot of money off of this.
And it's not me.
No. Awesome. Now, let's say that you want to install something that doesn't have an STC. Like for example, we all have seen that brightly rainbow painted Mooney, right?
Oh yeah,
that thing has a smoke kit.
Yeah, that thing is cool.
It is. Is there an STC for a smoke kit for a Mooney? I'm gonna give you the answer. No,
I don't think so.
No, there's not. So what could I do? How would I? Do you have like a rough idea? I'm not necessarily saying do you have like the number of the guy you got to call, but do you have a rough idea on how to get that approval to install something on an airplane or get something installed on an airplane that there isn't an STC for?
Well, for questions like this, just personally, I would go to the FAA website. I'd also talk to the FSDO and see what they have to say about it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great way to go. Because like if I don't know it and it's not really going to impact me on my day-to-day basis, call the FSDO. Most FSDOs are generally friendly. I haven't ran into one that's too rough, right?
Yeah.
Every place has like that one grumpy dude that like nobody really likes to work with. But
Shout out to Green Bay though, they helped me out because when I got my instrument rating, my physical certificate got lost in the mail. So when I was at Oshkosh last year, I was still waiting for it. I'm like, oh my gosh, my temporary certificate is about to expire. So literally mid-air show, I noticed there's a sign for the FSDO and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go in there and talk to somebody. And there was this man up there. He was like just getting ready to finish up, but he listened to me and helped me out and did all the work that he had to do to make it so that my certificate would appear. It was really nice. I didn't expect that. It was so easy.
Awesome. I know a lot of people like they think big FAA is like, oh, they're the Friends Against Aviation, merch link in bio. No, I'm kidding. But they, everyone has this kind of poor idea about the FAA, but like the FSDOs, sure, big FAA, yeah. But the FSDOs, the people that are kind of on the ground, they're great. So if you do need help, feel free to call them. So great course of action. Now, let's get a little bit into your airplane specifically. So it's a 172N. Now, this airplane has a couple specific speeds that are marked on your airspeed indicator. What is marked on your airspeed indicator by the top of that green arc?
So the top of that green arc is going to be your VNO.
Okay, what does VNO stand for?
That is the speed that it's kind of like your rough air speed where if it's bumpy out, you don't want to go past that speed.
Awesome. Now, what is it in this airplane? What's the actual number associated with that?
I believe, let me pull up the POH. I believe it's 127, but let me take a look. Our VNO is going to be, 126. I was close.
Now, that 126, is that what's actually indicated on your instrument?
Oh, yeah, that's our calibrated is going to be 126, or indicated. What we're going to actually read on the airspeed indicator is going to be 128.
Okay, so what's the difference between those two airspeeds? Why is my indicator showing me something wrong?
So calibrated airspeed is just calibrated for like instrumentation or installation errors.
Okay, is there any document? Is there anywhere where I can find to like maybe figure out what the difference is? Like, how do I know what my calibrated airspeed? Because it says right here, my calibrated airspeed is 126, but my indicated is 128. Is there any time in which my indicated could read lower than my limit while my calibrated be above my limit?
Yeah, there's a table in the POH that has all that stuff in it.
Awesome. Now, which airspeed? There's one really big airspeed that's not really published, or it's not, I don't want to say not published, but it's not indicated on the actual airspeed indicator. Which one is that?
That's going to be your VA, your maneuvering speed.
Okay, so what does maneuvering speed mean to you?
So maneuvering speed is the speed at which, if if you stay at the speed or below, you can do one full control deflection in any direction of just one control surface, and the plane will stall before it sustains structural damage.
Awesome. So is that speed static? Like, does that speed always stay the same?
No.
Okay, when and why does it change? What impacts this speed?
So your maneuvering speed is going to change with weight. A lot of times in the POH, it'll give you the maneuvering speed for your max gross weight, and it decreases as weight decreases.
Okay, can you explain why? Like that's always a...
Yeah, so basically, like, long story short, when a plane is lighter, right, it needs less lift to stay in the air. So your maneuvering speed and your stall speed are both going to decrease.
Okay. Can you go a little bit more in depth into that?
Yeah. So when let's say you're flying along at max gross weight, right, you are going to need to be going at a faster speed in order to create the same amount of lift that you would need if the plane was like 2,000 pounds or 1,800 pounds.
Okay, so what is this? Let's say I'm above my VA. Why is being above my VA going to risk damage to the airplane without stalling?
Because you're going to exceed like a load factor limit.
Okay, I could see. Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Exceeding a load factor limit. I guess maybe I was hoping for a little bit more of an explanation on like what aerodynamic factors are at play that cause this.
Yeah, well, so basically when your plane is heavier, I mean, you have to create more lift. You are going to be flying at a slightly higher angle of attack as well, which is going to be why your stall speed is also going to increase with weight. So as long as you stay below that speed, there's no way that you can exceed the max load factor, of course, taking out of the equation turns and stuff like that.
Well, even if we are in a turn,
Yeah.
what happens if I go into a turn?
Well, your load
and
factor will increase, but as long as you stay below that speed.
Yeah, as long as I stay below that speed, I can't generate enough lift. I can't generate enough acceleration to actually get this airplane to brake.
Yes.
Awesome. Now, talked about maneuvering speed. Let's talk a little bit more about center of gravity placement. And I know in a 172, there's not a whole lot of room that you can work with, but how is CG impacting the maneuverability and controllability of this airplane?
Yeah, so if your CG is more aft, that's going to make the aircraft less stable.
Okay, can you explain why?
Yeah, so when the CG is a little bit more aft, the arm between the CG and control surfaces like the elevator and the rudder is shorter, which makes it less stable longitudinally and vertically.
Okay. Now, yeah, I have a lower arm. Now, how is this aft CG going to impact my cruise?
So the aft CG is going to give you better efficiency during cruise.
Okay. Why is moving my CG to the back making my airplane more efficient?
Yeah, so when your CG is aft, you don't have to apply as much tail down force, which means, and you don't have to apply as much, back pressure, right? Because the CG is more aft, meaning that your airplane is going to be flying at a slightly lower angle of attack, which means less induced drag, which means more efficiency.
Awesome, right? Yep. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's talk a little bit about some emergencies for your airplane. Your aircraft is carbureted, right?
It is.
Now, what are some of the risks associated with a carbureted airplane?
Carbureted airplane, I would say that the largest risk would be carb ice.
Okay, what is carburetor icing and how would you identify it?
So carburetor icing is when if you're looking at the carburetor, if you can see inside it in that venturi area where the fuel air mixture is created, there's going to be ice buildup. And you can identify that by usually it would be engine. I haven't experienced it yet myself, but from what I've heard from others, it's going to be engine roughness, drop in RPM. Like you might be able to hear it, or the engine just feels kind of.
Okay. Now, is this going to be just like a quick, oh crap, my engine runs like crap?
I would say it's more likely to build up over time. But there could also be like maybe if your air filter is wonky or something, that could kind of make it happen a bit quicker.
Okay. Now, what would you do about this?
Well, if I suspect that I have carb icing, the first thing I'm going to do is pull my carb heat.
Okay. Now, where is that heat coming from?
So there is a shroud around the exhaust, and the air, when you pull carb heat, the air from that shroud, because it's very hot, it's hanging out near the exhaust, it gets pulled into the carburetor.
Okay. Now, what are you expecting to happen once you pull that carb heat?
When I pull carb heat, I'm expecting to see a drop in RPM, maybe 100, 200 RPMs. And I can also hear that and feel that the engine's running a little bit slower. And if there is carb ice, from what I've heard, you're going to kind of feel that melting of the ice. So there might be some sounds coming from the engine, or you might lose, if there actually was ice there, you would lose maybe more RPMs temporarily, but you'll eventually get back up to where you're supposed to be.
Okay, so let's say you turn that carb heat on, you notice a drop in RPM, the engine stumbled a little bit. What's your next plan?
So if it turns out it's not carb ice, like why?
No. The engine stumbled a bit, like it was ingesting water, right? So we recognize, yes, we definitely got some carburetor icing. It's dealing with it. The carburetor heat is working. Are you going to continue on into these conditions?
It depends on what's causing the carb icing. I from what I know, you can get carb icing if there's enough moisture in the air. It could be 70, 80 degrees outside. So I would think, yeah, if I'm able to fly with the carb heat on and I'm still able to make good power, I don't see why I wouldn't continue to my destination.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that as long as you know that the carburetor heat is actually working, right?
Yes.
Right. Does this airplane have a carburetor temperature sensor?
Does not.
Does not. Oh. I guess it's not your airplane. Let's say, so this airplane, it also has a primer, right?
Yes.
What is that primer doing?
So primer is something that we use to varying extents when we're starting the aircraft based on how cold it is outside. If it's a cold day and we're the first ones to fly, we might do 3 or 4 spurts on a day like today. Earlier, I was flying immediately after someone. I just put 1 or 2 just for good luck. But basically what the primer does is it kind of, it takes some of the fuel and it kind of just sends it directly to the engine before you actually start the engine up, and it kind of accelerates that process of burning the mixture and gets everything going more smoothly.
Okay. Now, let's say that little carburetor primer, it can sometimes be a little pain to actually get locked in, right?
Yeah.
What would happen, or how might you identify that carburetor or that primer didn't actually get fully locked in?
So like you're saying, if I'm on the ground and I pull it out and I try to give it a squirt and...
Well, no, you gave it a squirt. It started. You go and do your run up. What might happen during your run up if you didn't get that primer locked in all the way?
If I didn't get it locked in all the way. So that might mean that there's too much fuel going into the cylinders, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so too much fuel going in, that means that you're going to be running too rich, so you might have a bad magneto on the magneto check.
It might feel like a bad magneto, sure.
Right, it might feel like one because there's too much carbon on the spark plugs.
Yeah, there's too much fuel going into it, and you could be building up carbon. Awesome. Now you did talk about a mag check. What's actually happening during that mag check?
So when you're doing your mag check, you have your engine at 1700, you have it on both, and then you switch to one of the magnetos, then you're only those spark plugs that are fired by that magneto are going off. So you're seeing how that magneto is running.
Okay. So let's say you switch to the left and the engine died. Which magneto is bad?
So if I switch to the left and the engine died, then the right, or no, if I switch to the left and the engine died, yeah, it's gotta be the left one is the problem.
Awesome. Right. Let's say we go to start we're at the commercial level. We're going to be carrying around passengers now. Let's say you're out cruising around like this flight that we're about to go do with this, simulated photographer. And we're out flying around and you notice that they start to get real pale. They can't seem to catch their breath. They can't seem to finish a sentence. They seem a little nervous. What might they be experiencing?
Well, there's a few different things this could be. What altitude are we at?
So we're doing the mission, right? We're around Lake Winnebago, so it's low level.
Okay. So it's not going to be hypoxia, but there's two things I'm suspecting. It could either be hyperventilation, which isn't always obvious. It's not all the time. So it could be that. They could be getting motion sickness, or there could be a carbon monoxide leak.
Okay. How would you whittle this down?
So I would kind of use some deduction. So for carbon monoxide, which I would think is the deadliest of all of these, right? I do check the state of the exhaust pipe as part of my pre-flight check. I'm very conscious of that because one time I flew a plane that had a crack in the exhaust pipe and I was the last person to fly it. So seeing what it looked like as they took it out really put the fear of God into me. So I checked that on all my pre-flights. So if I know that it's not that, right? And on a day like today, we're not going to be using cabin heat. So at that point, I would think if it was today and say not like January, I would think it's probably not carbon monoxide, especially if I'm also feeling all right, there's a good chance that it's not that. So that narrows it down to two things. This photographer could either be hyperventilating or he could be feeling motion sickness.
Okay. Let's say he's experienced a little bit of motion sickness.
Okay.
Is there anything you could recommend to him to try and remedy this, or would we just call it a day and put the airplane on the ground?
Oh no, I've dealt with this before. I've had to nurse some people, and what I found has helped is putting the cabin air like blowing directly on them. So what I'll do is I'll just turn around and I'll take a sec to pull their air out and point it at them if it's not already pointed at them. I may also encourage them to, if we're going slow enough to where it's comfortable, like open the window, stick your hand out the window. And what I encourage them to do is find like a point off in the distance to look at. Because one thing that can mess people up that I've actually seen that could affect this photographer is people that got motion sickness when they go back and forth between looking at a screen, looking outside, looking at a screen, which he'll be doing if he's taking pictures. There's a good chance that could get him messed up. So I'll help him with that. I'll tell him, it's okay. Like take a break from the photos. I'll take it easy for now. And I do also go flying. Every time I bring a passenger, I have a big bag, like a big plastic bag, like a Target bag or something like that. Gives them a little bit more space if they do need to take care of themselves versus those little blue bags that come in the plane.
Yeah, those little blue bags can only carry so much. And, depending on how big their lunch was, right, you might fill that real quick. Mm-hmm. And that's just... Now, let's say they couldn't keep, they lost their lunch. Can you just yeet that out the window, or are you stuck riding around with that?
That's a biohazard. You can't do that.
Okay. I see where you're going with that. That's, somebody's internal bodily fluids, biohazard, right? That could, what would the FAA call that if we were to try and yeet somebody's internal bodily fluids out the window?
That's unsafe operation of an aircraft and throwing items that should not be thrown upon persons and property.
Okay, so like we can't throw something out the window without undue risk to the persons or property on the ground, right?
Right.
So what would kind of be safe to throw out the window then?
What am I throwing out of the window of an airplane? Well, depends on where you are. I mean, if you're kind of over an empty field, I know people have those like pumpkin dropping contests. That's safe because you're dropping it over just open land. There's nobody there that you can hit.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I like the kind of train of thought you went with of like, hey, no, we can't yeet the vomit out the window because, somebody's bodily fluid. And it's also like, come on, it's a plastic bag. Like that's not going to decompose anytime soon, at least not in anybody's lifetime. Um, awesome. So, Guy, let's kind of reset. Nobody's sick. But you're cruising along, doing this mission. We're over Lake Winnebago, kind of running along the shoreline, and you start to notice the engine stumble a little bit. You're starting to lose RPM. You're seeing just a gradual decrease in RPM. And you're not really able to get this power back. You turned on the carb heat. We're not seeing any resolution. What's your next course of action?
Okay, what altitude am I at right now?
So we're doing the mission. So we're low level. So let's say 2,500 feet.
Okay, 2,500 feet. I mean, my first thought at that altitude, like I'm losing power, I'm immediately pitching for best glide just to be safe, save myself as much altitude as I can. So I'm going to start trimming back for that 65 knots. And 2,500, I have a little bit of time. So I'm going to pull out my checklist and I'm going to look at the oil pressure and the oil temperature to see what's going on with that. If it looks like, high oil temperature, low oil pressure, I know I'm in trouble and I've got to go try to land at Oshkosh.
Awesome. Let's say your oil temperature is a little warm. Oil pressure's fine, right? So we've been kind of flying low, slow, flaps down, high power setting. And we start to see that oil temperature creeping up. We're losing a little bit of power. What might be happening?
Low, slow, high power setting. I mean, we could be running out of oil.
I mean, we've overheated the engine.
Yeah. For one reason or another, if we're at that high power setting and low and there's not enough air going over the engine, then yeah, that'll do it.
Right? Yeah, we could clean up the airplane, get air flowing over the airplane again, get air flowing over the engine again. And the only reason I, bring this up is when I was doing stuff with the DNR, we had to deal with that all the time in the summer. The engine would overheat and we'd have to break off from whatever we were doing, go fly around, cool the engine down, and then come back.
Gotcha.
Now, let's talk a little bit about some spins. What is a spin?
A spin is going to be an uncoordinated stall.
Okay. Now, how do we get into a spin? What leads up to a spin?
Well, you can't spin if you're not stalling. So there's that. I mean, generally, unless you're trying to spin on purpose, which is a lot of fun, by the way. Just bang the table there. If you get into a spin, it's generally going to start by, you're stalling, right? And more often than not, it's going to be that left wing that drops because of all the turning tendencies. So you're going to drop. And if you don't catch it in time, if you don't recover from the stall, it's going to turn into a spin.
Okay, so we've all we've all dropped a wing doing stalls at some point in time, right? What's the difference between a spin? Why do we end up getting stuck in a spin? And I know the 172 is designed pretty well to, the recovery of a 172 from a spin is effectively stop touching shit. It'll do it itself. But let's say that we're in something a little bit less docile, like a Mooney or, maybe even like a Cherokee 250 or something like that. What's aerodynamically speaking, what's happening in a spin that's getting you stuck in it that actually requires that recovery procedure?
So when you go from the entry and the incipient phase into the developed spin, what happens is the yaw and roll are coupling. And that's when it's like you're in that fully developed phase of the spin.
Okay, so yaw and roll are coupling. Can you kind of explain that just a little bit more?
So before you fully enter the spin, I mean, the plane, it's kind of like, one wing is more stalled than the other, right? So you're kind of just rolling in towards that wing. And then eventually what happens is the rudder kind of gets pushed as well, just aerodynamically, you're kind of going in this direction. The airflow kind of pins that rudder, and then now you're fully in a spin.
Okay. Now, let's talk about that recovery. How do we recover from this?
So in a Cessna, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go power idle, neutralize the ailerons, opposite rudder, like full opposite rudder, really send it in there, and then break the stall with the elevator.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, um, how would you identify which rudder to press?
So if you are in a situation where you can't see, I mean, obviously, if you can see, you're in VMC, you know what direction you're spinning, you push the opposite rudder. But I would say if you are somehow, for some reason, spinning in the clouds, you should press against the rudder that is fighting you, that's harder to press.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, Now let's get, let's talk about and verify that your airplane's airworthy before we start talking about your route. Um, what, like we've all seen, hopefully you've seen a maintenance logbook at this point in time in your training, right?
Mhm.
What are we looking for in that maintenance logbook for this airplane to make sure that it's legal for this flight today?
So you want to make sure that every inspection and AD that needs to be dealt with has been dealt with on time. You want to look for the last annual. Since this is a flight school airplane that's being flown for hire, you also want to check up on the 100-hour. Sometimes those get paired up with, like the 100-hour gets taken care of at an annual. So you can just see when the latest annual was. And if that happened, you want to look for your VOR inspection, although we're not flying IFR in this case, it still is a good thing to keep an eye out for. You want to check your altimeter pedostatic inspection when that was. Again, that's an IFR thing, but I still think it's something that before I go into a check ride, I want to make sure my plane's up to date on everything, right? It's a good look and it's safe. And you also have to check up on your transponder and your ELT inspections, make sure that those are up to date. Transponders every 24 calendar months, ELTs every 12. And you also want to check beforehand for your aircraft type if there's any ADs that need to be complied with. If they are, make sure that those are all listed and logged in the maintenance logbooks. And yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, where do you, or does this airplane have any ADs?
The 172 has I don't know about the N model. I haven't checked yet. I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna check like right before my check ride, but I do know that there's one about the seat tracks that I think like all 172s have. So
Yeah, yeah, most 172s have that. Yeah, that seat track one.
yeah.
Now, where do you find them? How do you know? Let's say you go and buy an airplane. How do you know what ADs to do?
So anything that you want to know about like ADs as well as like equipment lists, all that you can find on the FAA's website.
Okay. Do you know where? Are you just going to Google FAA AD website?
Well, I may have read that before, but what I did end up finding was something called the DRS, the Dynamic Regulatory System, and that's where I would search all this stuff up on.
Awesome. That's exactly where you need to go. It's a system. Um, yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful system. I'm so happy the FAA.
You're an aircraft owner. You would know better than I.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. I absolutely hate it. It takes hours to find anything.
It was down yesterday too. I was trying to find
Now, let's
it.
say again.
I said it was down yesterday too. I was trying to find some stuff for this last night and I just couldn't, it didn't even load. It was just white screen.
Yeah, and I mean there's some places that you can pay for they're better. Like the mechanics toolbox. I mean, if you're gonna buy an airplane, just pay the fee for it. Because it does like a serial number search on your airplane and it will it's great.
Toolbox.
Yeah. Now you brought up I believe you said something about a KOEL. What is a KOEL?
Yeah, so a KOEL is a kinds of equipment list, and this is a list that is going to be created by the manufacturer for different types of aircraft. Not all aircraft have them. I believe most newer aircraft do have them. And for the Cessna that I'm flying, it's under a different name. It's not called a KOEL, but it's basically the same thing, and you find it in your POH.
Okay. Is there any other documentation? Well, okay, I guess better way to phrase this. What does a KOEL do for me? Like, what's the point of a KOEL?
So the KOEL is going to tell you which items must be in the aircraft at all times, which ones you are able to fly with if they're in-op, and some items it'll specify how many of them you must have working in the aircraft.
Okay. Is there any other type of a list or anything that I could have for an airplane that wouldn't necessarily be in the POH that would tell me what could be broken?
There is.
And that would be?
So,
I know, never miss an opportunity to shut up, right?
yes. But since you ask, if I were an airline pilot, the aircraft that I flew at my job would have an MEL, and that is going to be a minimum equipment list that's created by the operator, so created by my airline for that specific type aircraft. And that is something that you're going to consult first.
Awesome. Now, is it only for the aircraft type?
I believe from what I've heard, if you're at an airline, each airline will create a different MEL for each type that they operate, but there could be some overlap.
So what it may, kind of the way that I was going for, it's for it's serialized by the aircraft.
Serialized.
Yeah, so it's not just for the type. It's not just like, okay, well, I own 100 A320s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do all 100 A320s have the exact same equipment? No, because like, let's just be honest. If I have 100 A320s, the fact that the possibility of getting 100 exactly the same A320s is downright impossible. So the MEL is going to be serialized for the aircrafts in which it applies to.
Nice. So each individual one. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, one MEL could say, hey, this applies to all of these serial numbers, but just make sure we're in the right one, right? Most airlines, what they actually do is you have an app now and you type in the tail number that you're on, and then it pulls you the MEL that applies to that airplane.
Very cool.
But University of North Dakota, they used to have MELs for their 172s. When they switched over to Piper, they don't have them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they were specific to that serial number.
Very cool.
So, but let's say we don't have an MEL. Where else are we looking to make sure that, like, let's say, for example, the attitude indicator in this airplane is broken for this flight?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How would I know if this is legal?
So there's a couple other things I would check. If there's no MEL, I check the KOEL. KOEL doesn't say anything. I would look at the type certificate data sheet to see if it's listed on there as a required item. That you can also find on the FAA website. And if it's not mentioned on there, I would look at 91205.
Okay. Let's say attitude indicator is broken. Is there any reason we couldn't go fly this VFR photography mission today?
No, I would do it.
Awesome. What needs to be done then if we're going to fly with a piece of broken equipment?
So it needs to be deactivated, placarded in up, and you have to make a log in the maintenance logbook.
Okay. Can you do this as a pilot?
Yes.
Okay. How are you going to deactivate this attitude indicator?
How am I going to deactivate it? So in this particular aircraft I'm in my old plane, I would there's like a breaker you could pull, but in this one, I'm not sure. I would start placard it. I would put a sign in a.
Okay. So it seems simple, right? That the pilot should be able to pull a circuit breaker and call it an op, right? What document could you go to see what maintenance items you're legally allowed to do?
So that's going to be in Part 43, Appendix A.
Okay. Is manipulation of circuit breakers or disablement of attitude indicator in Part 43, Appendix A?
I don't think I saw that one in there.
No. So I'll ask the question again.
Okay.
Can the pilot do this?
No.
No, right? Because let's be honest, to disable an attitude indicator, we'd have to pull the vacuum line off of it. And then if we're still running other vacuum systems off of it, like the suction gauge or our heading indicator, then we'd have to rejoin that system in some, it's well beyond what the pilot should be doing. You're not digging around in the back of the dash, right?
No, that's messy. Doing that.
Now, I mean, there are times in which a pilot can manipulate circuit breakers, but they're usually associated with an MEL procedure, right? Me at my carrier, if something's broken in the airplane, we have an MEL procedure. Like, let's say I'm trying to think. I think if my FMS, right, if my little, box breaks, like it just stays on a blank screen. If I remember correctly, don't quote me on this, right? Don't go to the comments and be like, you can't do that on air. But for example, if my FMS isn't functioning properly, the MEL procedure tells me which breakers to pull. And since it's noted as a pilot procedure, I can pull those breakers. I could put the collars on it and we could put it in the maintenance logbook. But if there's no procedure that calls it out, if there's no documentation that says pilot can do X, Y, and Z, no matter how simple it sounds, we want to comply with what's legal. And the example I use on why like we can't pull circuit breakers, even though it might seem super simple, in my airplane before I updated the panel, my ADS-B was on COM2 circuit breaker.
Mm.
I didn't know that. There was no wiring diagram that told me my ADS-B was on COM2. So we don't know all the things that are on that circuit breaker. Right? Or it was the other way around. My ADS-B was on COM2. My COM2 broke, right? Because it was, from 1984. So me and my mechanic, we were like, oh yeah, pull the breaker, put an in-op sticker on it, make a note in the log book, and be on our way, until Green Bay yelled at me saying, hey, we don't have an ADS-B signal on you. And I'm like, oh, I don't know why. I guess I'm not coming to Green Bay today. And I went home.
Wow. What a way for you to find out.
So, kind of long roundabout way of saying, like, can the pilot disable something if there's a procedure that specifically calls it out? But in most cases, no.
Yes.
I mean, unless it's something like super simple, like turning it off. But
right.
Manipulation of circuit breakers is not one of those. Now, how do you know if you're legal to do this flight? So we're picking up somebody, we're flying from point A, point B, picking up somebody, going and doing a mission, flying to point C, dropping off a piece of equipment, and going back to point B, going back to point A. Are you legally allowed to do this flight with your current certification and what limitations you have?
So I took this as I already have my commercial, right? And I'm getting
yes.
to do this. No, the flight is not legal the way we just described it.
Okay, so what's making it not legal?
What's making it not legal is the fact that I'm transporting a person, the photographer, and property, the SD card, from place to place for compensation.
Awesome. Perfect way to put it, right? We're moving something from point A, from its origination to another point, no matter how simple it seems, right? I mean, why the hell can't I move an SD card? Really? No, it's cargo.
Yeah. The littlest cargo.
So what would I need?
So there's
there's a joke that FedEx has the highest bandwidth because, like, if you mail something via FedEx, like, you can mail like a massive amount of bandwidth. Either way,
yeah.
It's the tiniest little cargo. Great. What? How would I make this flight legal?
So I thought of two different ways, and really one that would make sense realistically. Now, one option would be if he provided the aircraft, but I'm assuming he doesn't have one. He's not a pilot, and he's asking me to fly him. So I'm assuming he doesn't have access to an aircraft. So what I would tell him is, like, I'd be like, hey, look, I'm happy to pick you up at Sheboygan, do this photography mission with you, but I have to drop you back off at Sheboygan, and you have to find your own transportation to Oshkosh.
Awesome. Right, they'd end up having to mail the SD card or email, something along those lines, right? Now, what if the Department of Natural Resources provided the plane?
That would be nice.
Well, let's say that they hired you on as effectively a contract pilot for the Department of Natural Resources for the single mission.
In that case, I could do it because it would be incidental to the business.
Solid, right? Because you're not being hired and you'd be bringing the airplane back to the place that it started. The fact that there was an SD card in it is inconsequential. Awesome. Now, let's go and talk about your route. And what I really want to do is I want you to tell me a little bit just about your kind of train of thought for each leg. So I should have each leg in it. Let me. All right. You should be able to see ForeFlight pretty well, right?
Yep, I got it, and I have it open here on my device as well.
Okay. Just trying to make sure it like shows up properly for the recording later, for the content. So we're leaving 06 Charlie, which is Schaumburg. And I love how you like actually planned out like your crosswind departure and all this other jazz. It seems like, you know what? I won't talk through it. You talk me through it.
Sure. So yes, you have noticed that I put little points for where I turn crosswind, and the specific departure that I have to do if I'm departing from runway 11, we do have a noise abatement procedure at my airport. So I modeled that here on ForeFlight. What you do is you take off, you kind of extend your upwind, you follow these train tracks that are to the right of the runway, you turn crosswind on the specific street, then you have to turn downwind and kind of follow the highway for a little bit until you can break off and turn north. So I did that. And then I included a few points for a step climb. Since we are going to be conducting this flight VFR, I'm not thinking that Chicago is going to really want me up in their space, so I'm not going to count on that. And I'm just going to do some step climbs to get to make sure I stay below each layer of the Bravo. And after I'm able to clear out of that, I climb up to my cruising altitude, which is going to be 5,500 feet. And it looks like nothing is active along our route there. That's good. And yeah, then I have us pretty much going direct to Sheboygan.
Awesome. I'm happy with that. You planned for the airspace that you're going to be going around. How are you going to identify? Because I see you've got them here kind of marked in ForeFlight. I mean, let's just be honest. We're going to look at our phone and go, okay, yeah, the GPS dot shows me right there. But since we are going to be technically doing this VFR, how else could you maybe identify the edges of these Bravos to make sure you're cleared to climb? Because I mean, there's no guarantee that your phone's GPS is accurate, right?
Yeah.
Or your iPad's GPS is accurate.
So there's actually some visual points that I use in real life, and I put those points in those spots for a specific reason. Like you might notice that it's not like a perfectly straight line. So there are some landmarks that I use along the way. My first point, I believe, is just going to be when I cross the I-90, which is going to be the highway there. And I know that once I cross a little bit past that, it's like right when I cross that, I'm clear to start climbing up to no higher than 3,000. So I usually level off at around 2,500 at that point. And then coming into the next shelf, there's a lake, right? That's going to be like right below me and to my left. It's called Lake Zurich. And that's going to be like a bigger lake than kind of the other lakes in the area. And I do see that as a point where I can start my climb up. The next layer of the Bravo begins at 3,600. So I would probably climb up to 34, 35. And then I believe the point I have after that is going to be, what do I have there? That's going to be Fox Lake and that huge cluster of lakes over to our left. I've been there a lot. I know what it looks like. So I know once I'm abeam the beginning of Fox Lake, I'm out of the Bravo and I can continue my climb up to my cruising altitude.
Awesome. I'm happy with that. What is this right here?
That is going to be a area where they have parachute activity.
Awesome. Which side of this airport is it going to be on?
Well, I'm thinking it's going to be on the eastern, possibly the southeastern side.
Solid. So we're going on up to Sheboygan. Let's see. It's not really a whole lot going on in Sheboygan. It's a pretty straightforward airport. Nothing to be too concerned about. What I did like, this one is Sheboygan to Sheboygan. Let's see what that one. Oh, come on. Flight. Oh, I remember how I had to do it. You have to copy and paste it. All right, so this is the other route. This is KSBM. So when we got to Sheboygan, is there anything you're going to do in Sheboygan to kind of prep for the rest of this?
I would get some fuel for sure. I would fuel up, and I'm picking up my photographer and, you know, use the facilities, have a snack.
Awesome. Just wanted to make sure you were planning on a fuel stop.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
And that's another reason why I did 3 separate legs, because I'm like, why not just fuel up every time I'm there?
yeah. I mean, why not just fuel up? Especially, it's you, one other person, and some gear.
Yeah.
Like, there's not really anything that's going to impact you on your ability to operate this flight when it comes to your weight and balance. So I guess talk me through this route. Just again, give me your kind of thoughts you were thinking. How am I planning this? How do I know that I'm going to be good on fuel? Right? We plan like what airspeed are we planning for?
Yeah, so I figure I am going to be spending maybe an hour and a half or so, maybe hour to hour and a half, however long it takes for him to get his photos. But I did plan it out in a way so that I can just kind of easily follow the lake, and he's going to be on the side facing the lake, so he's able to get all his shots. And I'm just going to be, it's not a very big lake, so I feel like if I do need to head back for whatever reason, I'm able to do that. And at my speed that I would be cruising along at, it would probably take me 15-20 minutes to get there. And I would be starting off a little bit, taking off, maybe going a little bit higher just for safety reasons, and then kind of coming in and descending to a lower altitude so that he could get his photography done. And yeah.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
Now, let's say you do this loop.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the guy says, I didn't get everything I needed. Can we do another loop?
Yeah, so I think I had it to where I would be burning 9 to 10 gallons per hour. So we have enough gallons for several hours of this. I would say 2 to 3 hours would be like my maximum. But each loop around the lake, I believe, was only going to be about like 30 minutes or so. So we have plenty of time to get those shots. If I needed to go once, twice, 3 times, if he wanted to go from the other direction, we could do that. And again, I kind of made it so that, thankfully this lake isn't that far from Sheboygan. So if for some reason I had to head back or something was wrong with the aircraft, I could do that.
Okay. Now, what speed are you doing this at?
So when I'm around the lake, I'm thinking if I want to give him a chance to get some good shots, I'm not going to be in like slow flight, but I'll be slow, maybe around like 60, 65. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean 60, 65 is not bad. Let's say we keep trying to get these shots and he's like, I missed it. Can we get lower? How low would you be comfortable doing?
Yeah.
Or what would be legal?
So I'll tell you what's legal, and then I'll tell you what I'm comfortable with. So what's legal out here, especially over a lake, if we're, directly above the water, what's legal is I can't go less than 500 feet above any person, vessel, building, property, animal, what have you. What that means is, yeah, legally I could, like, there's this part here where we go out over Warbird Island, and that's pretty cool, right? There's a little island there, but if I were to go, 50 feet above the ground, would that be legal if there's nothing there? Yes, but I wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily doing that if I'm not going to be within gliding range of land.
Awesome, right? So you have a plan, right? You thought it through. It's not just screw it, do what the photographer says so that I can make my dollars and move on with my day, right? We're actually planning this. We actually care. Like, okay, are we going to end up in a situation that we don't want to be in?
Mm.
And you're right. Yeah, Warbird Island's pretty cool. There's a lot of birds there, so just they should call it Pelican Island, not Warbird Island. With how many?
Those birds are going to go to war.
I tried to land there once in my plane. No.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's covered in birds. Like the fact that it is the secondary seaplane Oshkosh landing location. No, like it is. Go land anywhere else other than Warbird Island with how many birds are there.
Got you. Good to know.
Say again?
I said good to know. A Warbird Island.
All right. So we're out here. We're doing this. We're doing these loops around it. He's getting the shots. We get right up here at Shiki, and he's like, I gotta pee. Can we stop at Oshkosh?
If he says he has to pee, I'm going to say, look, I'm just going to take him back to Sheboygan and we're going to handle it there.
Is it legal for him to go potty in Oshkosh?
I mean, look, I legally cannot take him from point A to point B. But if it's an emergency, I suppose I could. Right? I don't think I would do that. I think I would be like, look, he's an adult. He can make it 20 minutes.
Well, so here's the thing. The FAA has come out and said, like, for bodily needs, like, even if you got to, like, stop and get lunch. Oh, I think it was just, I think I lost you for a little bit there.
Yeah, it says trying to reconnect. It says I'm on the Wi-Fi. I'm not sure.
Oh, come on, internet.
Hmm. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Ugh.
All right. Oh,
really?
Nope, lost her.
Trying to reconnect.
Let's see if she can make it back. While we're doing that, let's get. Too big. There we go. I'll be down there. Oh, she's trying to join back in. All right, awesome. All right, are we square?
I think we're good.
Maybe.
Okay. I got you.
So I'm not sure where we lost you. I don't remember because this was one of those FAA opinion pieces that came out, like kind of where people were like, okay, this seems a little ridiculous. Are you really telling me that I can't stop to pee? Like, this is stupid. The FAA does not prohibit bodily function, like does not prohibit you from landing to accomplish bodily functions. Cause like, let's take this a little bit more, outlandish. Cause this is actually the flight I gave you is a mission that I did with the DNR.
Okay.
Right. But we didn't just go to Oshkosh Lake. We didn't just go to not Oshkosh Lake. We didn't just go to Lake Winnebago. We did pick up a photographer in Sheboygan. We went and did some stuff over here, and we went and did some stuff up here, and we went and did some stuff up here, all the way at Rhinelander. And we even stopped at Rhinelander, and we got food at Rhinelander. We went to the bathroom at Rhinelander. There's nothing illegal about that, even though we got paid. It was a separate entity that paid us to operate this flight. We weren't providing transportation. We were stopping for bodily needs, right? There's nothing in Rhinelander. There's no dining facility in Rhinelander that's a destination.
Yeah.
Right? No shame to anybody, no shade on anybody that lives and loves Rhinelander, but like, let's just be honest. They're not known for their culinary expertise. So, if you can make that discernment that like, hey, we're going for these bodily needs, right? We're not, you see where I'm going with that?
Yes.
And I'm trying to, I don't remember the opinion off the top of my head. But that's the FAA, because people went to the FSDO, people emailed the FAA, people mailed the FSDO, and they were like, hey, like, can I really not stop for a potty break if I'm taking a photographer up? Like, what, you really want us to pee in bottles? Um, because again, let's say that you picked them up in Sheboygan and instead the mission was, way up here in Rhinelander, and they're like, well, I gotta pee. You really going to tell them we got to fly all the way back to Sheboygan to go pee?
That would just be cruel.
Yeah. Like at that point, you might be cleaning that out of the airplane because like it's not like the photographer knows like the legalities of what we're doing, right?
Mm.
They're just there to take pictures. Okay. So we talked about what could make this flight legal. Is there anything that would preclude you from doing this flight today based on the weather that you got earlier?
Yeah, so I actually checked the weather this morning right before, and I said that given today's weather, it was going to be a no-go because conditions were going to be marginal into some pockets of IFR.
Awesome. Well, not awesome. Sucks, right? But it's a very real thing that could happen on, or it's a very real thing that could happen when you get into that commercial level. Now, is there any other types of flying that you could do without an operator certificate?
As far as commercial types of
Yeah, commercial. Like, is there anything else you could get paid to do?
Yeah, aerial firefighting is one of them.
The aerial firefighting is one of them. I'm assuming you don't own a fire boss.
Not yet.
Not yet. Believe me, those things are so expensive. When I went and toured Whip Air, it was one of those like if you have to ask, you don't have it.
Yeah.
It's like when you look at a menu and it says market rate, and if you have to ask, don't. Like just yeah, like just get the chicken. Just get the chicken parmesan or whatever it is instead of the lobster at market rate. But right, we can do aerial photography. What about tours?
Yeah, you are able to do sightseeing tours.
Okay. Is there anything I need to do? Like, can I just go buy a 172 and be like, I offer tours now?
No, so you don't have to get a air carrier cert, but you do need to talk to the FSDO, and you do need to get a letter of authorization, I believe it's called.
Yep, letter of authorization, an LOA. Now, what's the limits placed on those air tour operations? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I believe that you're not supposed to go further than 25 nautical miles from your point of departure.
Yep, no more than 25 nautical miles from your point of departure. Can we land at other places?
If you have to get fuel, I believe you can.
Yeah, that's the aircraft needs kind of stuff,
Yes.
not we're going to stop here and and that's another reason why they kind of have that 25-mile range, because there shouldn't ever really be a point in which you need to stop for fuel in an airplane that you're doing tours of.
Right.
Now, talked about weight and balance. Let's talk a little bit more about the performance associated with this flight. Is it at any point were you concerned about runway lengths here, given the weight of the airplane?
No, I mean, I ran the numbers, but we're fine.
Yeah. What impacts those numbers? Like you ran the performance numbers, what we were saying, gives you takeoff and landing distance data. What are some of the things that we would be concerned about? Let's say we change the location of this to Arizona, like Flagstaff, with a field elevation. I think Flagstaff's field elevation is like 4,000 or 5,000 feet with temperatures in the 90s, if not over 100s.
Yeah, so that's going to be a whole different situation. I actually experienced this my first time flying out west in Sedona, which is a 5,000-foot elevation and a pretty solid. I think the runway was about 5,000 feet long as well. So a healthy distance for a Piper Cherokee, one would think. But it was 9 o'clock in the morning, not even that early or not even that late, but it was hot out, and it was a hot day, high elevation, and we barely made it off the runway.
Okay, now what would we call this? Like what we talked about field elevation, we talked about the temperature. What kind of numbers or what kind of altitude are we kind of coming up with when we take all those into account?
So that's going to be our density altitude.
Okay, so what is density altitude?
So density altitude is going to be our pressure altitude corrected for non-standard temperature.
Okay. Now, if I was to kind of break this down Barney style, how would I explain that?
So I guess you have to go a couple steps back, right? So you have, your AGL altitude, your absolute altitude, which is just above the ground. Then you have your true altitude, which is going to be your altitude above sea level. And then we get into performance altitudes, pressure and density altitude, which are not physical altitudes, but I describe it as like the altitudes that the airplane feels like it's at. So we take our altitude and we apply pressure to it, the altimeter setting the current pressure of the day where you're taking off. That's going to give you your pressure altitude, which on a hot day is going to put you higher because it's a lower, it's on a lower pressure day, or on a hotter day, it's going to put you at a higher altitude or a higher elevation.
Okay, so is temperature impacting my pressure altitude?
No, temperature is only for density altitude. Pressure altitude just takes the pressure into account.
Okay, awesome. So let's say we're cruising along and we're at 11,000 feet indicated.
Mm-hmm.
And ATC asks you, hey, can you make it to 12 for me? And your field elevation, or correction, the temperature on the ground when you took off, let's say it was this Flagstaff day, right? That's what you said, Flagstaff. Yeah. So it was that Flagstaff day where it was super hot, almost 100 degrees. You barely got off the 5,500 foot runway. You're cruising around 11,000 feet, and ATC asks you, hey, can you give me 12,000 feet for traffic?
Unable.
Are you capable of this?
Unable. I don't even know how I got up to 11,000.
Okay. How might you calculate that? Let's say you were, let's make it something a little bit more reasonable. You're at 9,000 indicated. That seems a little bit more reasonable, right?
Yeah.
How would you calculate to see if you could actually get up to, let's say ATC was asking for 10?
So you want to so you're currently at 9,000 feet is what you're saying.
9,000 indicated, yes.
9,000.
And ATC asked for 10.
Okay. So I know that in the POH, it does give you a ceiling, which is a pressure altitude. It's not a physical altitude. It's a pressure altitude. And I mean, technically what you can do is you can calculate the pressure altitude and the density altitude of where you're at and then see if you're still able to make a climb or not. But I mean, in practicality, what you can do, which I've done before, is I'm already high up and I see that I'm trying to climb and, I'm maybe making like a 200 foot per minute climb. I'm just going to look at that and say, yeah, I'm probably not going to make it up there. It's not really a good idea to push it.
Okay. Now, is that what ceiling is in that POH that you were talking about?
So there's going to be there's two ceilings. There's a service ceiling and an absolute ceiling.
Now, are those true altitudes, those AGLs, those pressure, those
I believe
density?
Those are pressure altitudes.
Is there any way you could check?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it is different in some POHs. I'm going to go check too.
Okay, let's look.
Yeah. My favorite phrase as a flight instructor when I don't know the answer. Let's go look that up together.
Let's go look that up together. I love it.
All
right. So our service ceiling is going to be 4,200 feet. It doesn't specify in the POH that is a pressure altitude or a density altitude, but I have read that often it is a pressure altitude. So in this POH for my aircraft, it just says 4,200 feet.
Now, let's say we took off and our pressure altitude was, took off from our Flagstaff, right? 5,500 foot, or let's just actually look up. It's KFLG. Come on. I'm just going to actually look it up. So Flagstaff is 7,000 feet, right? So we're taking off from Flagstaff. 7,000 foot is field elevation. Pressure altitude, we'll call it 8,000, and it's 98 degrees on the ground. can you calculate a density altitude to see if we're safe to fly off, safe to take off?
Yes, I can. One moment. All right, so indicated, so let's say 7,000 is where we're starting off at, right?
7,000, yeah, 7,000 is our field elevation.
And if the pressure altitude is higher, I mean, I would need like a pressure setting to calculate that. So
We'll call it 2948.
2948. All right. So pressure altitude is going to be 74 on 7,400. And you said it's 98 degrees Fahrenheit. So let me do a little conversion here. That gives us about, let's round it to 37 degrees Celsius. So our density altitude on the ground is going to be a whopping 11,437 feet.
Okay, so do we think that service ceiling is in pressure altitude?
It'd be density altitude. That's the one that really matters to performance.
All right, there we go. Yeah, there was believe me, the density altitude at Flagstaff gets a whole lot worse in the summer, especially once the storms start rolling through and you get really low pressures coming across, and yeah, it's not great. There was there's people that have gotten stuck in the box canyons up there because they think, oh, pressure altitude, that's what my POH does all of its calculations in, right? But then when we go across that chart and we see that it asks us for the temperature,
yeah,
that's the correction for density.
Right, because it doesn't ask for the density altitude. It gives you pressure altitudes and then temperature corrections, which is the density altitude.
Exactly.
And that's
right.
what physics cares about, is the density altitude.
Yep. It's what the airplane feels, as you said, it's what the airplane feels like it's flying at. And so could we do this calculation in the air?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. And it's not unreasonable for ATC to ask, like, hey, are you capable of doing this? I mean, they ask me all the time. And again, the Airbus, but I mean, let's be honest, the Airbus does the math for me. So let's say we're climbing and, we're getting on up to our cruise altitude. What's going to happen to my true airspeed as we continue to climb?
Your true airspeed is going to get higher as you climb.
Okay. Why? What's happening?
So as you climb, the air is going to get thinner. So the airplane is going to be moving faster through that air. So your true airspeed is going to be higher than your indicated airspeed is going to be.
What's going to happen to my ground speed?
Your ground
as
speed,
I climb?
Your ground speed is also going to get higher.
I'm trying to find the way to that. Like, I understand where you're going with that, right? Because as the air gets thinner, it gets less dense, right? So we're thinking less dense, less viscous, easier to move through it, right? Let's go look into PHEC, right? Because that's where we would find because my understanding, the way I approach that is, it's not that no, you're right. Because as we start getting into Mach numbers, you're right. I'm dumb. Awesome. Now, we talked decent bit about your systems, and I've got a lot going on in there. Let's talk about we talked about when you looked at weather and that you decided that it's not going to be a good day to go fly. Where are you getting your weather from?
So for this flight, I got my full briefing on ForeFlight.
Okay. What are we getting from that full briefing?
So when you get a weather briefing on ForeFlight, it gives you a lot of stuff. It gives you NOTAMs, it gives you the current weather, the METARs, it gives you TAFs, it gives you winds for the time that you're going to be flying. If it's, soon enough, if it's like the night before, the day of, it'll give you what the winds are going to be. It'll give you cloud coverage, if there's any weather, any hazardous weather on your route, it'll give you all that stuff.
Okay, so let's say I wanted to get a weather briefing. Let's say I got a weather briefing yesterday for a flight that's today. What would that weather briefing be called? It wouldn't be a full weather briefing, would it?
If I got a weather briefing that far in advance, it would probably be like an outlook briefing.
Yeah, be an outlook briefing. Is there any, you know what, we're using ForeFlight at this point. Let's talk a little bit more into the more complex aircraft that you might be getting into, things that involve pressurization, right? Because there's nothing necessarily illegal about you operating a pressurized aircraft, right?
Right.
And once you start flying commercially, right? Some rich guy is like, hey, I don't really feel like flying my airplane. Can you, like, Jimmy Buffett's a perfect example. Everyone talks about how Jimmy Buffett flew his Albatross. No, he hired 2 pilots and he sat in the right seat periodically.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't.
I didn't know that. What?
Yeah. Believe me, I did the pilgrimage all the way down to Florida to look at his Albatross up on a stick, and I listened to the book, and I'm like, wait a minute. He's not talking about flying this thing. Like he's
what?
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. He's not even operating as pilot in command of his own Albatross. Like, what is going on? My entire life is a lie. So it's more than reasonable that you would be operating somebody else's airplane. Mm-hmm. What are some of the benefits of operating a pressurized aircraft?
Well, the biggest benefit is that you can go to higher altitudes and stay awake and alive. Another thing that comes with that is often pressurized aircraft are going to be able to be air conditioned, and it gives you, like, your body is also going to acclimate better. You're not going to have like gas issues and whatnot.
Okay. So where do most general aviation airplanes, non-turbine aircraft, where are they getting that pressure from?
So it's going to be a turbocharger.
Okay, so a turbocharger. What is a how's a turbocharger pressurizing the airplane? What's happening?
So basically the main parts of a turbocharger are going to be the turbine and the compressor, and then there's a shaft that connects them so that when the exhaust gas spins the turbine, it spins the compressor. The compressor takes outside air, pressurizes it, compresses it, makes it higher pressure, and then what would happen is that it would send it sometimes through an intercooler that cools the air down because it's going to be really hot. Sometimes there may not be on older ones, and it just goes straight to the engine. But in this case, in a pressurization system, it's going to take that pressurized air, take it to the intercooler, and then through ducting, it's going to make it sway to the cabin.
Okay, so how do we control the pressure? Like, because with the way you just described it, the cabin's a balloon now, and it's going to pop.
Oh, no, so we don't let that happen. So there's going to be some gauges in the plane that will help you maintain a certain differential. So you want to make sure there's not too high of a difference between the pressure inside and the pressure outside. There's also going to be relief valves that are kind of out in the back of the plane, and they open and close to let air out as needed to maintain the aircraft at a safe pressure.
Okay, would we call those relief valves?
I've seen them labeled as different things. I've seen them labeled as like relief valves, safety valves. Not sure what you're getting at as far as like the specific name, but from what I've read, that's what I've seen them referred to as.
Okay, so I mean, relief valves, safety valves, those are usually the ones if something breaks, the thing that normally controls the pressure breaks in a closed position so that we can allow the pressure out in the event of an emergency or if the pressure gets too high. Mm-hmm. What normally controls the pressure is the outflow valve. Since we don't really have a whole lot of control of the pressure that comes into the airplane, right? That's going to be predicated on engine RPM or, engine health, turbine health. What we do have control over is how much air gets out of the airplane, which is usually an outflow valve, which is what we control.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. I love it that you already talked about differential pressure. That's great. Now, what are some of the risks associated with a pressurized airplane?
So a big one would be depressurization.
Okay. Is there only one type of depressurization or decompression?
No, there's three.
Okay, what are those?
So we have explosive, which is what it sounds like. Let's say a part of the aircraft comes off, like the door comes off, and poof, that's going to be explosive depressurization. We have rapid depressurization, and then the gradual kind, which they say is actually the most dangerous because you don't really notice it. That could just be like a small leak in the system that over time will lead to loss of pressure.
Okay. How would you identify a gradual decompression?
So there's a couple of ways you can do it. I've heard there could be like a light hissing sound. You also might hear like almost like something's like there's air kind of like making its way out of a little pocket. I've heard that that is a thing. But another thing that I would think that you might notice is on the cabin pressure gauge. I mean, if you see the cabin pressure gauge going down over time, that's got to be part of your scan, right? So you might notice that and be like, "Hey, that's not right."
Yeah, awesome, right? A lot of airplanes have warning systems associated with the pressurization system as well. Now, let's say that you had a rapid decompression and we're cruising around at 16, between the 16 to 18,000 feet range.
Yeah.
How long would you expect to stay conscious?
16 to 18,000. Take a look here. I think it's about maybe a couple minutes.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, like I think it would take you would have about a couple minutes. Like if you're at around like 16, 18,000 feet, maybe like 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, so with a rapid decompression around that 16 to 18,000 feet, sure, shortening it down to that 2 to 4 minutes. What they usually say, it's about half of what you would expect from just hanging out at that altitude without the rapid decompression, right? Because of that shock of having, the air and a lot of bodily fluids sucked directly out of your face is, it hurts and it can impact on whether or not you stay conscious. One thing that I would probably add when it comes to the gradual decompression is like, what are your symptoms going to be?
Oh, like if I was becoming hypoxic?
Yeah.
Oh, I already
Right.
know. I've experienced this before. If I'm all of a sudden like having the best time ever and I start laughing at everything, that's how I know I'm in trouble.
So what have you done the hyperbaric or not hyperbaric, but the what do they call it? The decompression chamber, I guess.
Not yet. So I was actually flying with a friend at night and we were flying at an altitude. I don't remember how high we were, but we weren't like super high, right? We weren't at an altitude where we actually had to have oxygen. But I was just like, I always thought this thing about, oh, your eyes use up all this oxygen at night. And so you need to, fly lower and stuff if you're not on oxygen. I kind of thought, I believed it, but I didn't really believe it. But on this night, I definitely found out that it was true because after we were in the air for about an hour and we were just cruising along, I could not stop laughing. I looked outside and there was like a star, and the star looked like the funniest thing ever. And I was cracking up at this star. And then I go turn to look at my co-pilot, who's technically thankfully the one flying the plane at the time. And I just look at him and I just like start laughing. His face looks so goofy to me. Everything is just so goofy. And I think he realized what was happening. And I'm glad he did because I was like, this actually felt really good. I was like, I don't know if I want to do anything about this. It's kind of a vibe.
Oh, well, at least your symptoms, right? And that's one thing that a lot of people like they don't experience, right? And everybody's got different symptoms of hypoxia. So you experienced it, and now you know how to identify it. What I tell some people is, do the pudding test. If you say the word pudding out loud and you giggle at it, then you're probably hypoxic.
Okay.
But I guess for you, just look at a picture of whoever that was flying, and just like if you start giggling, like yeah, it's definitely
Yeah, no, that was like probably the best environment for me to learn that in now. So I know if I'm having a good time, that's fine. If I'm having a real good time, send.
awesome. Now, I'm happy with that. We talked about the let's say you were in this pressurized airplane and you started to hear that hissing problem. You started to hear hissing. You started to suspect a gradual decompression.
Mm-hmm.
What's your first step?
I would think that there's something wrong with the pressurization system. I would verify. I would look at the cabin altimeter and the cabin VSI to make sure that I do see something there. But I would still plan on descending as soon as I can. I'll talk to ATC and I'll tell them that I do need to get to a lower altitude because I may be having a pressurization issue.
Okay. Step one, supplemental oxygen.
Yes.
Right. If we start any suspect of any pressurization problem, immediately supplemental oxygen before we start doing anything else.
Put them out.
Because you know what's really awkward? Oh no, I'm having a pressurization problem. Let me establish a stable 500 foot per minute descent or 1,000 foot per minute, or, a reasonable foot per minute descent. You're still hypoxic.
Yeah.
Be really awkward for you to tune the autopilot down for a 2,000 foot per minute descent, and then you pass out and end up in the dirt.
Yeah,
right?
That wouldn't be fun.
No. So step one, anytime there's any concern of a pressurization problem, even if you're sitting here like, okay, well, I don't think I'm at 15,000 feet. I shouldn't be concerned about pressurization too bad, right? I can deal with this later. I can diagnose the problem. No, straight to oxygen.
Right.
Oxygen bottles are a whole lot cheaper to refill than it is to replace you or your airplanes. Right. And I mean, can't really replace people, but I guess from a commercial standpoint, you talk to any boss. Yeah, we're all either way. Let's talk about some of the maneuvers that you're going to be doing on your private pilot check ride, or not private pilot, commercial check ride. Let's talk about Chandels.
Okay.
Can you talk me through a Chandel and explain to me, what are we practicing? What's the point of this maneuver?
Yeah, so I've heard this described as a couple things. One is that it's a box canyon evasion maneuver. You can certainly use it for that situation, because the idea is to just kind of get yourself in make sort of a sharp turn and then get out and gain altitude quickly and not really go too far laterally. So basically what you're doing when you're doing a Chandel is, you're staying at or below maneuvering speed, banking 30 degrees, then going full power, starting to initiate that climb. And your goal is to make a 180-degree turn. So for the first 90 degrees of that turn, I'm going to be increasing my pitch. In my airplane, I try not to pitch above 15 degrees for that, and looking outside, checking with the attitude indicator to make sure I'm in that parameter. I'm using the trim to help me hold that back pressure. And then once I hit that 90-degree point, I'm going to be holding that steady high pitch angle, and I'm going to be taking out that bank gradually. So I can roll out on that 180-degree point. I'm going to be just above stall speed if I'm doing it right, and I will have gained quite a bit of altitude along the way.
Okay, awesome. Now, I mean, box canyon, if I'm stuck in a box canyon, what's my priority?
I mean, you don't want to end up in that situation in the first place. Hopefully your planning wouldn't get you there. But if I'm stuck in a box canyon, I would definitely want to maneuver away. Like if there's a way I can turn back around, right? Get away from the terrain that's closing in on me.
Okay. So what airspeed do I start Chandels at?
I start them at or just below maneuvering speed.
Okay. Now, is this conducive to staying away from the terrain that's in front of me? No. So let's say we make this, we're bombing canyons, we're doing bush pilot stuff, and we end up in the wrong canyon, right? We did our planning. We ended up, we should have made that left turn at Albuquerque, but we didn't. Okay. And we end up finding ourselves stuck in this situation where we see the canyon is ending in front of us. What's the best way to keep my distance away from the terrain in front of me?
I would go slower, and I would probably try to hold VX.
Yeah, VX, right? What happens to my turn radius as I slow down?
As you slow down, your turn radius gets, your rate gets less, so your radius gets more. Right? Am I remembering that right? As you slow down, you're turning at a slower. Oh no, your radius gets less. The radius is
right?
bigger if you're faster. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the better way to put it is what happens to the amount of space I
Right.
take up,
You're not taking up as much space. It's a tighter turn.
right? So, and again, don't take this as a lesson for mountain and canyon operations. That is not what I am pretending to do right now. But you find yourself stuck in a box canyon VX. That's the first thing you do, full power VX, and then start working your way around. If you try and do like a Chandel, Chandels, what they were originally designed for, they were like a World War II or biplane fighter maneuver, because we all had fairly similar airplanes, right? So if you're trying to make a turn where you end up just above stall speed, for somebody else to make that turn behind you to try and shoot you, they have to lead the target because they have to make sure the bullets get to where you're gonna be, not where you currently are. Well, if they have to aim ahead of you, now they have to pull a higher angle of attack. They're going to stall. They're not going to get rounds on target.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
I'll remember that next time I do a Chandel. I'll be like,
it's like, ooh, I'm like,
the enemy.
Where'd my right? Here's my little airplane, right? So if we've got two similar airplanes, right? One's coming up behind you. Okay, bang, bang, bang. They're trying to shoot you. Chandel, they're trying to lead the target. They're at a higher angle of attack to lead the target. They stall out, and now you can get on target.
Nice.
So Chandel's not a box canyon recovery maneuver. But what we're really just trying to do is operate the airplane between a wide range of speeds at maximum performance, at maximum power, right? What about 8s on pylons? What are those?
So those I've heard also originated as a war thing. It could also, you could be shooting at targets. I've also seen it used that, like, maybe if you're trying to take pictures of something, you can use that to maintain a good track around whatever it is that you're taking a picture of.
Okay, so how do I do 8s on pylons? Can you talk me through, like, what do we get? Like, if we were about to go fly, how are we going to do an 8s on pylons?
So the first part of this, I mean, you want to get to, these are like kind of lower altitude maneuvers, depending on the day, depending on the winds, but they are lower altitude maneuvers. Around where I live, we would start them anywhere around like 1,500 MSL, just in that neighborhood. We want to pick 2 pylons that are, they're about like half a mile to a mile apart. You want them to be in line with each other, and you want to be able to do a figure 8 around them. And what you do is you figure out where the wind is coming from, and you want to make your entrance into that 8 at a 45 degree to the downwind from either side. As long as you're in that 45 degree, that's the recommended entry to that. And basically what happens is you're tracking a figure 8 around these 2 points, and you level off in the middle. And what happens as your ground speed changes, which obviously it's going to change with the wind, as your ground speed increases, you are going to want to, you're going to have to pitch to a higher pivotal altitude. So the pivotal altitude is going to change, the altitude that you're flying at is going to change based on your ground speed.
Okay, so what is pivotal altitude? I know we kind of talked about it a little bit because we were talking about like where it originated and all that jazz, but like I guess talk to me about what you're looking for to see if you're doing this correctly.
So as I'm going through and I'm tracking around my point, if I feel like my point is getting, if I'm looking at my point and I'm in line with it, I'm doing good. If it starts to get ahead of me, I know I have to pitch down. If I feel like it's getting behind me, I have to pitch up.
Okay, sure. Yeah. All right. We've got a pretty decent idea on like how to accomplish the maneuver. I'm happy with that. Talked about hypoxia. We talked about, you didn't do anything in a complex airplane, right?
No.
So there's no complex endorsement that you're getting associated with this?
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right. So we don't need to talk about any of that. Those are real complicated maneuvers. I mean, you've done steep turns. I'm not too concerned about that. Chandels and lazy 8s are really the only two. Chandels, lazy, or 8s on pylons. Lazy 8s, I don't know. What do you feel about lazy 8s?
I think they're fun. I think it's very satisfying. It almost reminds me of like a much milder version of a hammerhead, where you're kind of like in a hammerhead, you go up, kick the rudder, and a lazy eight. It's a G-rated version of that.
Yeah, yeah. Not many people have hammerhead experience. What you out in like an RV-14 or like an extra 300 or something?
Yeah, so I did some aerobatic training. Actually, when I did my first spins, like a couple weeks after getting my private pilot license, I went over to Gambit Aviation at Aurora, and Jared took me up and we did spins. We did all kinds of aerobatic maneuvers, including the hammerhead, which was my favorite. And then last year, right after Sun and Fun, I went to Patty Wagstaff School in St. Augustine, and I got my actual spin endorsement ahead of me going for my CFI, because I'm like, might as well get this out of the way and do it at such an iconic place where I got to train with her top instructor there, and we did all kinds of aerobatic maneuvers. And then I found out that I'm actually kind of good at it. I was catching on pretty quickly, and they had me doing whole sequences. So that's going to be my next side quest, hopefully. But yeah, hammerheads are still up there as some of my favorite maneuvers.
Awesome. Side quest is where the best loot is. So, like, let's just be honest. Like, you just got to do like, the side quests are where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many G's you pulled? Like, what was like your max?
Yeah, so we had
before you were like, I'm out.
Well, we had a G meter on the plane. The most I ever pulled was 4.5. I felt fine, so it wasn't anything too crazy on those maneuvers, but we'll see in the future.
I mean, that's more than I could pull. I'll tell you.
Really?
Yeah. I did 4.4 and an extra 330, and I was like, I tap. I'm done. Let's go home. I don't want to play this game anymore. Like,
I'm out.
Yeah, it wasn't even just like 4.4. And I was like, okay, well, that was a little uncomfortable. And it was like 4.4. I'm all tingly in the face. I can't fly. Your flight controls.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome that you're able to 4.5 and you're fine. Cause I mean, the extra 330 is rated for 10. So go check out, like, I went out to Sky Combat Ace and
in Vegas.
Yeah. And yeah, we went and did, I did hammerheads, and then like they gave me the controls, and they're like, this thing's rated for 10 G's. Like, you're not going to kill us. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, fun. Went to 90 and just pulled, and was like, okay, I'm just gonna pull until I see the highest number on that thing. And 4.4 was it. I was like, pull. I'm done. I quit. I tap.
That's amazing. Well, you went for it. You went for it.
Yeah. I mean, I almost G-locked myself, but awesome. Let's get into a little bit of some aeromedical, and I think that'll probably be what closes it out. But let's talk a little bit more about aeromedical associated with your passengers, since, again, you've been a pilot for long enough. You're fairly versed with what you can legally do. But what about your passengers? Let's say you're letting people onto the plane for X, Y, or Z, and you notice somebody seems to be stumbling, that they're slurring their speech. Can you let them in this airplane?
So 9117 says that I can't let anybody that is visibly intoxicated on the plane. So there's a little bit of a gray area there. There is an example I heard one time of, like, someone shows up smelling like alcohol. Can you let them on the plane? And I'm like, well, they could smell like alcohol because they came from a bar. They could be sober. So in that case, I would say that they could still board the aircraft. Now, if someone's coming in and stumbling around and, hey, what's up? Yeah, buddy. There might be an issue there. There is a liability issue with that one.
Nah, I mean, it's not even liability. I mean, the regs say no.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I'm not taking a risk. Like, maybe he's just really happy. Like, no, I legally cannot let this guy on my airplane.
Exactly. Like, you think the flight attendants are up there on your commercial flight as you're getting on, like, just being friendly? No, they're trying to comply with that regulation, saying, like, well, we can't let you on if you're drunk.
Yeah.
Now, what about somebody that, let's say somebody really needs healthcare, right? You're going from point A to point B, and they are obviously under the influence of some kind of pain medication, pain management. Can you let this person on the airplane to transport them for the medical care that they need?
Yes.
Just by themselves.
You are able to legally do that if you're transporting them to get medical care. But I mean, they have to not by themselves. They would have to be attended, but I could let them on the aircraft.
Awesome, right? So they can't you can't transport them by themselves. They have to be accompanied with some kind of EMT that's managing that pain management medication, right? Now, let's say you've got some passengers that they went and they're talking about this awesome scuba diving trip that they're coming back from. And you're flying around in a little 182 unpressurized. You're doing island hopping from, like, let's say, down in Hawaii, right? And they went and did some scuba diving down in Hawaii. Are they safe to go fly in this little island hopper?
Not necessarily. It depends on how long ago it is that they have been scuba diving.
Okay, so what's the limit?
So I'm gonna double check just to make sure I have the numbers right. I know that if they did a uncontrolled ascent, it should be they should wait at least 12 hours before boarding an aircraft if going under 8,000 feet. If it's a controlled ascent, 24 hours, and if you're gonna go above 8,000, for both of those, it would be 24 hours.
Okay.
The recommended wait time before going to flight altitudes up to 8,000 feet is at least 12 hours after diving that did not require controlled ascent, and at least 24 hours after diving that required a controlled ascent. The recommended wait time before going to altitudes above 8,000 feet is at least 24 hours after any scuba dive.
Awesome. So with that in mind, I guess that answers it. What are we trying to avoid? What are we trying to prevent by limiting people's flying after scuba diving?
We're trying to prevent decompression sickness.
Okay. How might you identify decompression sickness in one of your passengers that might tell you, like, hey, we need to get the hell on the ground?
Question. Let's see.
So I guess let's talk about what is decompression sickness.
Decompression sickness is basically like the body not having enough time to adjust to like this huge change in pressure. Because
okay, so what happened?
So like when they go deep into the ocean, right, the pressure is like really, really high, and then all of a sudden they're going up to these altitudes that have really low pressure. So I know it's something with like nitrogen gas that enters into the body. And so it looks like some signs that I was able to find would include joint pain, dizziness, extreme fatigue, tingling or numbness, and difficulty thinking clearly.
Yep. So what it is once you go down, every bit of air that we breathe in has nitrogen in it, right? The atmosphere is 71% nitrogen, which means that the stuff that gets stuffed into scuba bottles, I mean, it's just air. Like, they're not putting oxygen in it because oxygen's corrosive, right? We're not just going to give people straight oxygen. So it's air. So when they go down to those altitude, when they go down, underwater, that nitrogen gets dissolved into their blood. Then once you go up to altitude, what happens once we start removing pressure off of water, right? When we put water under vacuum, it starts to boil. Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of the same thing that's happening in their blood. The nitrogen is boiling out of their blood. And now we've got bubbles. And I mean, it's not just in their blood, it's also in their joints and the tissue. And that's why you're getting the numbness and tingling and joint pain, because like we've all popped our knuckles at one point in time. That's a from what we've heard, right? And bubbles and gases escaping from your joints. Well, it's that same kind of idea, right? That gas dissolves into their joints, and now it's starting to get out of their joints. Now they're starting to hurt. That like tingliness and trouble thinking and headaches and stuff like that. That's because that nitrogen dissolved into like their spine, and now they're getting gas bubbles in their spine, causing pressure on their spine.
That doesn't sound like a fun time.
No, it's absolutely terrible. People die. So people lie. Passengers lie. They're not going to tell you that they went diving if they know it's going to impact their travel plans. They're not going to say. And, you know, with how the industry is definitely slowing down, you know, you might end up in the situation where you're doing little island hopping if you're trying to build those commercial hours, right?
Yeah.
And again, as I said, passengers, they lie all the time. And I mean, it's not that they're lying to be malicious. They just don't know what the risks are associated with it. Right. Now, I guess last thing I want to ask is there anything that you're uncomfortable with when it comes to going into your commercial check ride that you really want to dig into a little bit more? Any kind of questions you had? I know my commercial check ride, I think the oral was 30 minutes. And if you, yeah,
Okay.
it was, you know, and it's even when I did commercial rides for, you know, the flight schools, there's no DPE, no examiner is going, how do we start a 121 carrier? No.
Thank God. Because I'm not going to lie, like that part is the most intimidating part of all this to me. All those regulations and all the different kinds of certificates. And I'm like, I'm not a lawyer. I just fly the plane.
Yeah, exactly. And think about it. The best way to explain it is, am I transporting someone from point A to point B? Am I being paid for it? And did I provide the plane? If that is the case, I need an operator certificate. Anything beyond that, difference between private carriage, common carriage, blah, blah, blah. As long as you're not saying, hey, I have an airplane, I'll take you from point A to point B into a public manner, you're not holding out, right? So you're not doing common carriage.
Yeah.
The parts where you can sometimes run into trouble is when you start flying for some of those smaller fractional ownership programs, because they have gotten into trouble with that whole 18 to 24 contracts thing that we were talking about. I don't remember which fractional it was, but that's effectively what they were doing. Is they were saying, hey, you are purchasing a fraction of this airplane, and then you can pay to operate that airplane. You're effectively I don't want to say chartering it, because it's not a charter, right? Because you own the airplane.
Right.
You're paying effectively the costs of operating that aircraft. But the issues lied when the fractional owners didn't have control of the aircraft. Right? Because if I own an airplane, if I own even a portion of an airplane, I should have the deciding factor on whether or not it goes from point A to point B, right? Those fractionals weren't giving that authority to the quote owners, right? So they ended up effectively being a 135 that was trying to skate through as a 91K.
I see.
Now, the pilots knew this. Who do you think's going to get in trouble if the pilots were well aware that this was a fly-by-night, we're going to pretend to be 91K, but we're actually a 135? Do you think the pilots are going to get in trouble for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's the final authority to the safe and legal operation of an aircraft? The pilot in command. Exactly. So that's when you start running into those concerns is, am I operating for a shady operation? And as I kind of said, as the industry is slowing down, I mean, for heaven's sakes, even I can't get a job at a legacy carrier. So it's, you know, the industry has definitely slowed down. So the things to kind of look out for when you're out there flying is like, if you're doing like a 91 operation and some of the passengers are like, oh yeah, I paid $300 for this ticket. There's your little red flag.
Ding, ding, ding.
What would that technically be?
I mean, that's an illegal charter.
Exactly, right? Because was it scheduled? No, right? Because we're taking off from point A to point B at a random time. And what was another one that got in trouble? Boutique got in trouble for playing as a 135, even though every day at 9:30 they went Phoenix to Tucson.
Oh, you need 121 for that.
Like, right? So instead of trying to memorize the regulations, try to put a scenario for those situations,
Okay.
right? The way that really helped me understand all of those regulations is I started Googling this regulation violation. And I would find the stories of boutique pretending to be a 135 on that Phoenix to Tucson flight, right? I don't remember that fractional ownership. It might have been FlexJet. It might have been NetJet. It was like, there's a bunch of fractional ownerships right now, so I don't want to throw shade on the wrong one. But so I'd find those violations and read the whole story on why the FAA got to that conclusion that it was a violation, instead of trying to memorize it in this just like vague understanding, right?
I like that strategy.
Anything else that
Not in particular. I think I'm just going to go back. I mean, it's another, I think, 2 or 3 weeks before my actual check ride, so I have time to look back over everything in my notes. But definitely the regulations are intimidating, so I'm going to do what you just suggested and do some diving into them.
Yeah. Now, I mean, with this plan that we did today, you knew, hey, we're illegal. We're transporting cargo from point A to point B, right? I definitely try to find that opinion from the FAA on like, hey, can I take a potty break without it counting as a 121 operation or a 135 operation? Just so that you can reference it, right?
Okay.
Because some of those scenarios I've seen from some of the other students that have gone and taken their check rides, like one DPE, he does this really, you've got a buddy that runs a nonprofit, and the nonprofit is having a banquet that has $35 tickets, but we got to go and pick up oysters over in Nantucket. And I'm going to give you $400 for us to go pick up these oysters for this nonprofit. Is this legal?
I don't like that question.
Well, let's break that down.
Okay. So who's providing the aircraft?
You're providing the airplane.
I'm providing the aircraft, and I'm also the pilot. Okay.
Yep, you're providing the airplane. You're also the pilot. The nonprofit isn't paying you. Your buddy is paying you.
My buddy is paying me. So it's not incidental to does the nonprofit count as a business? Can it be incidental to the business? No.
Is the nonprofit the one paying you?
No,
Have you
they're
been
not.
hired by the nonprofit?
Well, that's what I'm thinking too. Like, even if I was, would it count? But like, if they're not the one paying me, if my friend's paying me, then no, right? Because it's not incidental to the nonprofit. If they were paying me, it would be different, I would think.
Yeah, so if the nonprofit hired you, you're providing transportation from point A to point B of cargo, right? Now, you're also working for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Let's think back to our private pilot privileges.
Yes. So, yeah, even as a private pilot, you could get paid if it's for, I think it was like a charity organization.
Charity 501c3, right? So you see how that's one of the real popular ones I've seen is like, hey, let's throw a charity in there to see if they still remember what they can do as a private pilot.
It's a good one.
Right. And let's throw that wrench in is like, okay, well, the nonprofit's not paying you. Your buddy works for the nonprofit. And he's like, I'm just going to give him cash out of my pocket and we'll deal with it later.
Gotcha.
Right. So now we've kind of got a couple different points where we go, okay, how could we make this legal? Right. Like if you just, Venmo me, like, that's not really legal. But if I get a check with the nonprofit's account on it, well, now it's legal because I'm being reimbursed by the nonprofit.
Right. So yeah, you have to have that documentation that you're officially getting reimbursed by that organization.
Right. So that was one of the really big ones I've seen recently is, hey, a 501c3, you got a buddy, there's this intermediary kind of situation. So be on the lookout for those. I don't know what your examiner, I think that was one from an examiner in Chicago. I don't know if you're going to be going, if you're taking your ride in Chicago, or somewhere else. I know if you come up here, Shane, like he's good, right? He's good. That's how I'm gonna leave it at.
Nice.
But yeah, so other than that potty break scenario that we brought up, I might try to dig a little bit more into the aerodynamics of spins and the maneuvers that you're going to be doing on your check. I know I cracked the joke, never miss an opportunity to shut up. Let's explain just a little bit more.
Okay.
Right. What we want to try to avoid is the DPE just thinking that you're using buzzwords to try and skate your way through. Right. Because that's a really popular tactic nowadays, and it annoys the hell out of me. And that wasn't what you were doing. I could tell, like, hey, we've thought about this. You've thought about this answer before, but it wasn't that scripted one out of the ASA book or the M0A book or whatever book else that's out there. So just try to dig just a little bit more into it. But where did my mouse go? There it goes. I'm just scrolling through my notes, making sure. What was the one? I think there was something in airworthiness documentation. Can the pilot disable a piece of equipment?
Yes.
Right. That was one of the big ones. What's a ferry permit?
A ferry permit, that's going to be a permit that you can get to fly an aircraft with inoperative equipment to go get the equipment fixed.
Okay. Where do I get one?
You have to go to the FSDO for that. Talk to them.
Right. Let's say I've got an airplane that's out on a mission, or, how do I want to word this? You encounter weather conditions that require you to exceed that 100-hour. Can you continue this commercial operation past that 100-hour inspection?
So you said I'm already out and I am encountering conditions that mean I'm going to have to overfly it.
Yes.
I would say yes. You can also overfly it by, I believe, 10 hours if you are going to the place that you're going to get it fixed.
Awesome, right? Now, what happens to does that mean my 100 hours starts over the moment let's say I fly 106 hours?
No.
Does that mean I get another 100 hours?
No, it still is from the time when it should have been.
Should have been done. Awesome. Talked about weight and balance. We talked about stability. That was awesome. We had a little mix up on your service ceiling, on how that's predicated. Mm-hmm. It's density altitude, not pressure altitude, but we got there. Your system seemed fine. I wasn't too concerned about that. Does your airplane have a winterization kit?
I was actually just thinking about that today. I don't think so.
Okay. What does a winterization kit do? What's the point of one?
Yeah, I saw that going through the POH and I was just like, I do not know that we have one. I would think that it's something that protects the engine during colder temperatures.
Okay. What are we trying to protect it from? I guess the better way to put it, if you have, do you have CHT gauges in this thing? Cylinder head temp?
Not in this plane. No, we don't have any of that.
No. you've checked the oil in your airplane when it's really cold, right?
Hmm.
Does it flow very well?
No.
Now, let's say that oil never got to warm up because it was always that cold.
Hmm.
Do you think that's doing a very good job at lubricating your engine?
No, it's stuck.
Yeah. So that's what a winterization kit is doing. It's blocking off air from certain areas. Some winterization kits block the actual intake partially, like that right in that nose area, right where you see the cylinders and stuff. Some winterization kits go right there, and they block air from actually cooling the cylinder heads down so that they can reach the appropriate temperatures. Most just block the oil cooler inlet so that the cold air can't go over the oil cooler and cool the oil down, allowing the oil to get to the temperature that it needs to be.
Hmm.
I don't know if you noticed that when we flew my airplane, it had that little slidey door on the front of the cowling.
Yes.
That's my winterization kit. It slides over in the winter to block the oil cooler.
There you go. Nice.
Right? Your Cessna, it probably does have the option to have a winterization kit installed. Next time you check the oil, I'm trying to remember. Can you see the oil cooler from the oil door?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So, if it has the winterization kit, you're going to see a plate bolted to that.
Okay, I'll take a look. I would think
Right?
that we would have that because we live in Chicago, but I haven't been like told, oh, this is a thing to look out for. I see in the POH that we can install it, but I don't know. One more thing to look into.
Yeah. So, I mean, I forget. I know mine is below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. My winters, I should slide that door shut. So I don't, I live way up here in, the frozen tundra.
They're in Canada.
So yeah. So I have to spend time with mine closed. Down in Chicago, maybe it's warm enough most of the days. Talked about that. I'm happy with that. Yeah, so I mean, the only real big things that I really, there wasn't a whole lot of big things. There's a lot of little things. We just had, I wouldn't even say a lot of little things. There were some little things that we had to clear up. But for the most part, you had a solid understanding. Your understanding of whether or not you can do these flights was great. And I know that's kind of the big concern. I would just go through the airplane flying handbook on the maneuvers just to get a little bit better way of explaining it with a little bit more aerodynamic detail involved.
I'll do that.
But yeah, other than that, I think you're going to do fine on your check ride. Again, commercial's not, a lot of people are concerned about commercial because the regs seem so in depth and seem so complicated. But commercials, it's important, but it's more focused on, can you fly the aircraft smoothly? Can you do these maneuvers, and are you safe? Right. So, good luck. As always, if you got any questions, you know how to get a hold of me.
Thank you. Oh, this was fun.
Of course. Well, you enjoy the rest of your night, and